Good evening, everyone. I now call to order this Monday, December 2nd meeting of Council Committees for Lancaster City Council. Mr. Harris, would you please call the roll of members this evening?
Yes, Madam President. Mr. Matt.
Here.
Mr. Arroyo.
Here.
Mr. Cleese.
Here.
Ms. Craig.
Here.
Ms. Diaz. Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
And President Beke.
Here. Councilor Diaz is excused for this evening. A couple of reminders at the top of our meeting for everyone here with us this evening. I ask that you please silence your phones and devices if you haven't done so already. This meeting and its participants are being recorded. Tonight, what we have are meetings of committees of council. There are no general public comment periods during this meeting. However, committee chairs will call for comments from the public for agenda items. Each speaker is given 3 minutes and must begin with your name and block of residence for our meeting record this evening. Thank you in advance for ensuring everyone gets equal time. Before the committees, we will begin with the approval of 3 sets of minutes for November 4th, November 14th, and November 26th committee meeting minutes.
Motion to approve all 3 meeting minutes. Second.
We have a motion and a second for all. Any council comments on our minutes? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Matt.
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Beke.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. We'll begin then with the Personnel Committee. Councilor Cleeks.
Thank you, Madam President. The Personnel Committee has 8 items on the agenda for tonight. The first item is the nomination for appointment to the Lancaster City Housing Authority, Ms. Sharon Allenspan.
She is here.
And could you please step forward, go to the microphone, please.
Good evening. And since you're the first at the podium, I'll just remind you if you could turn that on so you see the green light, so you can be heard here in the room. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. And would you please introduce yourself to council and tell us why you would like to serve on the board?
Sure. My name is Sharon Allenspan. I'm from the 0-100 block of Holly Circle. There are a lot of Hollies in my neighborhood. But my interest in serving on the Lancaster City Housing Authority really came from a time about 2 years ago when I had the opportunity to spend a day training with the employees of the Housing Authority, and their passion for the work that they do and the residents that they serve was very infectious. And so when I was invited to serve on the Housing Authority Board, I was very interested.
Is there anything specific you would like to achieve during your term on the board?
I think initially for myself, it would be really learning more about housing and housing, the implications for housing in the city of Lancaster, because we know that housing is a very important concept. And so I think initially it would be a lot about me learning. They've offered training, and so I'll be at the beginning taking things in, but eventually I'll be able to contribute based on my skill sets.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from other members of the committee? From council as a whole? Thank you very much. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll make a motion to move this nomination to our next full council meeting on December 9th. 10?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, thank you. The next item is the nomination for appointment to the Traffic Commission, Mr. Philip Stone Kennedy.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your willingness to serve. And would you please introduce yourself and tell us why you want to serve on the Traffic Commission?
Certainly. My name is Philip Stubb Kennedy. I live on the 0-100 block of Chester Street in Southeast. And I'm excited to serve on the Traffic Commission because I am excited by the city's Vision Zero plan, and I have 2 young children, and I'm really excited about them growing up in a city where they can walk and bike and get around the ways that they need to in a safe way.
And as you know, the Traffic Commission plays a very important role in the life of the residents in Lancaster City. It impacts directly the efficiency, the safety, the quality of life for the residents, including the visitors. Can you share with us any experience or any background in traffic management, for example, or public policy, urban planning, that would support your role on the board?
Yeah, so for about 5 years, I was a tenant organizer in the District of Columbia, and so more on the housing side, but really familiar with ways to, the need to have inclusive consultations when you're planning public policy and making sure that, different voices are heard and incorporated into plans. And so that's something that I really want to take with me.
Are there any questions or comments from other members of the committee?
Councilor Cleese, if I may.
Please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kennedy, for putting yourself forward for this nomination. I want to echo Councilor Cleese's comments that this particular commission is of it's important to residents. A lot of people come to the Traffic Commission with things that are just like very much affecting their everyday life. But I really am encouraged by your sentiments towards Vision Zero. It's something that's very important to me and to the city. I was just curious if you have any thoughts on the interventions that the city is currently putting in place, and if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see the city put forward, either in your neighborhood or anywhere in the city, to make it safer for vulnerable road users.
So one thing that I've seen a lot of that I've really loved in some parts of the city, and I'd like to see expanded, are some of the bump outs, especially with the with the rain garden things where it kind of beautifies, but also keeps cars parked a little bit away from the intersection, so that when you're walking, particularly with a stroller, that there's visibility. If you're pushing a stroller across the street, the cars coming down the road will see you before you get into the street. So I'd like to see some more stuff like that. I bike a lot, and I have a cargo bike, so I put the kids on the back. So I've enjoyed going up the section of Christian Street has good bike infrastructure, and some of the bike lanes on the other streets have been really helpful too.
Thank you so much. And Chair Caliste, if I may, could I request that we open for public comment for the Traffic Commission nominees? I know that, again, this is a board that's really important for residents, and I just want to make sure that residents have the opportunity to speak their mind on that.
Absolutely, Councillor. Are there any other questions or comments from other members of the committee?
Thank you for your willingness to serve, and thank you for answering some of the questions tonight. We talked about Vision Zero and some of the key aspects of that. If you could just expand on your pedestrian safety goals on the commission.
Yeah, I've just noticed in my neighborhood, I think that there are, citywide, it's a wonderful city to walk in. There's a lot of stuff that is within walking distance, and I think that too often folks, I don't know if it's just are not comfortable because they're, the intersections can get a little hairy, or just are not thinking of it as an option. And so what I would hope is that, folks really see walking and biking and scootering and using a wheelchair as options to get around the city. I would like that to be more front of mind for folks.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Councilor Cleese.
Are there any other questions? Please go ahead, Madam President.
Good evening, Sir Kennedy. I appreciate you taking the time to answer our questions. The Traffic Commission is one of those commissions that acts rather independently from council, so this is our chance to ask questions. I just wanted to make a note. You said in your resume that you are bilingual, and I just wanted to note my appreciation for you serving on this committee, as that's so important, as there are many residents that will come before you that may speak Spanish as their primary language. So thank you.
Thank you, yes.
Any other questions, comments from council? Or questions from the public?
Hello, Tony Dastra, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. Sir, you said you live on the 0 block of Chester, was it? Okay. I would like to invite you to join me at church on Sunday, 6:30 Bethel AME, because I think we as white individuals need to be conscious of the spaces we're occupying and the history of that area of town. While I think we are in concert on the values that you're hoping to bring to the Traffic Commission, there is a cultural dissonance to some of these initiatives in that part of town specifically. And I'd like to help you build a bridge between members of the community so that they feel they can look to you as an advocate on their concerns, because these problems are wicked. And you nodded, so you know what that term means. But just thank you for your willingness to serve, and if we could connect after this, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. Yeah, are there any other questions or comments from the public? Now I make a motion to move this nomination to our next council meeting on December 10th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And the next item on the agenda is the nomination for appointment to the Traffic Commission, Elizabeth Reeves. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Elizabeth Reeves. I live in the 600 block of East Claremont Avenue here in Lancaster. Born and raised here. The reason I decided to try out for the Traffic Commission is I'm concerned with the flow of traffic and the different things that have been changed in the last year and a half. So one way to bring that concern is to actually do something about it. And in order to do something, you have to actually step forward and volunteer your time. So that's what I'm doing. I'm a retired correction officer. I also work 2 days a week right now at YIC. So I try to keep myself busy and involved in different things, and this is one way that I want to involve myself.
Thank you for your willingness to serve. And based on your experience, what do you see as the primary traffic-related challenges in Lancaster City?
Right now?
Especially in the downtown area.
Downtown, I think it's more the flow of the way the traffic is going right now, and the fact that the city decided to put up all these little white poles at the intersection, and I understand now why better, but it's still a concern, because to me, and this is just a personal thing, it's made traffic more difficult. Because they're extended out into the street, you have to go around them to get where you're going, which makes it more difficult with traffic coming in the opposite direction in certain sections of the city. I'm not saying all the city, but in certain areas of the city, those barriers have become a nuisance. Whether or not the city decides to stay with them, I don't know. As far as downtown, I don't really see too much as far as traffic. There's a lot of construction going on, so that's with any city. You're going to have different areas as far as traffic is concerned. I understand that they are planning on doing something on Ann and Judiata Street to try and improve that intersection there. I attended a semi-meeting that the city held at that intersection in the summer to try and get a better understanding of what the city was planning on doing. I agree with some of it. I don't agree with all of it, because again, it's going to hinder some of the traffic flow instead of making it better.
So what can be done in order to improve that?
Again, until I actually know where the city is heading, it's going to be difficult to tell you. From what I understood at the meeting that I attended, they want to bring the sidewalks out further into the street. Doing that at that intersection at Ann and Judiata, again, is going to make it difficult for traffic to flow evenly and safely. I haven't seen any crossing guards at Ann and Judiata. I haven't seen any crossing guards at Susquehanna and Ann. And if they plan and actually succeed in doing the things that they're doing, as far as changing that intersection, you're going to have some kids getting hit. And without those crossing guards to help flow that traffic, you're going to have little kids that are out there trying to cross the street on their own. It's already bad. And if you're going to bring those sidewalks out into the street again, or out into the street, the way they are planning, it's not going to help the kids. It's actually going to hinder them.
Do you have anything in mind, to improve, for example, to enhance pedestrian safety, or any measures in mind, or when you join your term on the board?
Right now, no. I'd like to see a little bit more of the planning that the city has in mind before I can actually comment on that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from other members of the committee?
Yes. Thank you for putting your nomination forward. What would you say you would like to see in regards to slowing traffic down in the city? Because a big issue we have is cars that speed. And the difference between speeding at 25 miles an hour, for example, is significantly less lethal than someone driving 35 miles per hour, for example. And this is a really important issue to the city. So I'd just like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I know that the concerned citizens of South Ann Street has asked the city to put a stop sign at Green and Ann to try and slow the flow of traffic a little bit and the speed of the traffic. That would probably help as far as that particular area. Some of the other areas in the city, I'll give you an example. Coming up Queen Street, there are times when cars are flying up Queen Street coming into town. I don't know how to slow them down, or what you can do to actually slow them down to improve the speed. You already have signs posted telling us what the speed limits are. What else can be done as far as maybe the speed strips or small bumps to slow the traffic at certain areas? I don't know. I really don't know. Because I know the city is doing different things or tried different things to accommodate the speed within the city limits. Again, it's all up to the driver, and rather not the driver's going to be obeying any signs that are out there telling them how fast they should be going. So.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councilor Roche. And are there any other questions, comments from other members of the committee? From Council as a whole? From the public? Good evening.
Good evening, Council. My name is Carl Feldman, a resident at 645 Hamilton Street. The appointment of a traffic commissioner, among other board appointments, is quite important. The reason I think about it that way is because the Traffic Commission has its hands on the levers to do something that we're often not able to do, which is to save life and limb in the city. What saves life and limb in the city and makes it possible for people to get to work or school if they're children is by making sure that more space is given over to the people who use all modes of transportation, some of whom cannot afford a car. I do not have a car by choice, but some of my neighbors don't have one at all and they cannot afford one. They need to be able to cross the street without fear of being hit. And that's what the interventions that the city put in my neighborhood effectively did. I'm very grateful to have bump outs that protect people walking to and from McCaskey to make it easier for them to wait for the bus or get to school. I would invite you, Ms. Reeves, to come to the intersection of Plum and New Street where the Turkey Hill is. They've put into place a traffic circle, which has been incredibly effective at slowing down cars. It's with deep satisfaction that I stand there and watch the cars slow before they go into the turn. And it's not a matter of what the driver chooses to do. It's a matter of what we build our city to force the driver to do. And I would really ask you to engage with me a little bit about those things and the rest of us who depend on these interventions to make us safe here in town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony Dasher, 700 block New Holland Avenue. Thank you, Ms. Reeves, for putting your nomination forward. I also agree with Mr. Feldman on the built environments. The built environment is the biggest thing we can do to reduce speeds in the city, but I also can understand the position of the bump outs being problematic in certain parts of town, because while some people can't afford, this is maybe where Carl and I have some dissonance, while some people can't afford a car, there are some people that the requirements of their job require them to have a car, and parking in that part of town especially is constrained, and it creates this perspective that when we do these improvements, it could be damaging to an individual's life because then they got to pay for private parking, right? But I do still agree with Mr. Feldman on we need to find solutions for the built environment. I want to ask you about a specific style that is in limited use in the city. There's one over on College Avenue and I think one on Liberty Street. It's called a raised intersection or a raised crosswalk, where you actually bring it up, because to your point about putting obstructions in the road to force that slow, do you think raised intersections are something you would support in certain parts of town as like a compromise between bulb outs and doing nothing?
Well, if they're raised, how would someone in a wheelchair or...
Sure. How would they cross? How's it accessible? Believe it or not, raised intersections actually increase accessibility, because instead of the intersection going down, it's level. So, for example, me and my cousin, he's blind, we walk around, and it's much an easier transition for him. You still need the little dots so that you can feel where you're at.
Right.
But knowing that, does that seem like something you'd be in support of? I'm sorry. Do you feel like that's something you would consider supporting?
Sure.
Okay, because that's a very promising sign to me, and I think we need to create creative solutions for that part of town.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Adriana Hirsch, 100 block of East Ross Street. Dean Evans, who previously held a role on Traffic Commission, was, I think, in the role for 30 years, 20 or 30 years. So I just want to remind council that when you're appointing folks to positions on Traffic Commission, these seats tend to be held for quite a long time. And when it comes to the vision that we have for the city, we have a Vision Zero vision. And I think it's very important that we have a Vision Zero hero sitting in these seats. We went through a very long period where we had people making decisions to create literal highways throughout our city, which meant that streets that once were safe for kids to play in, for people to habitate, were given to cars. And now we're in a time where we can essentially take back our streets and have them be for people, for all of us, right? So I just really want you to think long and hard about who gets put on to Traffic Commission, because we are in a time when we can fix a lot of wrongs and really look to the future and really take back our city streets and make it, again, not that Lancaster is not a wonderful place to live. It is continuously getting better and better. We in our neighborhood have seen the wonderful effects of the white posts and how they have helped reduce crashes. So there is absolutely a learning curve, I think, to being a resident on Traffic Commission. But I just really encourage you to think to the future when it comes to who gets a seat on the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the public? Comments? Thank you. Now I'll make a motion to move this nomination to our full council meeting on December 10th.
I think I would like to make a motion, actually, to deny the nomination. Mr. Reeves, thank you so much for putting yourself forward. But I know this is very, very important to people, and I think a lot needs to be done to make our city safe for people that are outside of cars. And quite frankly, I don't see a lot of municipalities doing that kind of work, but the city has bravely engaged in that work. And I just want our traffic commission to be consistent with that goal that the city has put forward. Again, Mr. Reeves, I want to thank you for putting your nomination forward. I will speak for myself and say that I would like to hear from some of the other folks that the city was considering for this nominee, so I'm a no vote at this point.
Mr. Harris, as a point of order, excuse me, Councilor Khalid put forward a motion to send this forward. Is a motion to deny appropriate at this time, or simply not a second appropriate at this time?
Sorry, it's simply not a second. So we
Okay.
need a second in order to move that motion forward.
Great. I just wanted to clarify that as we go through
And
this.
without
Thank
a
you.
second, it fails.
Okay.
So we going to table this nomination?
There is no second.
Forward, okay.
Mr. Ned, you have the opportunity.
At this time, I think it would be best if we tabled the motion to give more opportunity for other candidates. Once again, thank you, Mrs. Reeves, for your willingness to serve. But with this needing more time to further evaluate other candidates, I will also be a no vote.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed, for your comment. Thank you, Ms. Reeve, for your willingness to serve. And we would like to give all the opportunity to other candidates, in order to review, their paperwork. So, thank you so much. And the next item, we're gonna move on to the next item here, the two nominations two nominations for appointment to the Traffic Commission. The first nomination, to the Planning Commission. Yeah, the first nomination is Reverend Kenneth Weeks, and the nomination of Andrew Wesley Wallen. Those individuals have served on the Planning Commission for some time, and they have expressed the interest to be reappointed. Are there any comments or questions regarding those reappointments?
Councilor Leaks, thank you very much. So for these two reappointments, I just wanted to make a note for the record of the meeting that they've served for some time on the Planning Commission, and they were willing to continue to serve and remain in those seats. They have done good work, and the Planning Commission is a busy one, and appreciate the time that they have invested and are willing to continue to invest.
Are there any other comments or questions from council? From the public? So I'll make a motion to move those two nominations to our next council meeting on December 10th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And the next item is a nomination for reappointment to the Historical Commission. Mr. John Holden, and he has served on the board of Historical Commission for some time, and he has expressed his willingness to be reappointed. Are there any questions or comments regarding this reappointment from the public? Now I'll make a motion to move this nomination to our next council meeting on December 10th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next item is the council resolution number 90/2024. We are appointing Christopher Aviles. I don't know if I said it right. Aviles to the zoning hearing board. So Mr. Christopher Aviles is a resident of the city, and he currently serves on the zoning hearing board, and his term expires at the end of this month. And this resolution is we are appointing him to the zoning hearing board for a 3-year term, effective January 1st, 2025. Are there any questions or comments about this nomination, this resolution from the public? Now I'll make a motion to move this resolution to our next council meeting on December 10th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And the last item on the agenda for tonight is council resolution number 91/2024. We are appointing Kevin Amber as an alternate member to the zoning hearing board. Kevin Amber has been currently served on the board, and his term expires at the end of this month. And this resolution is we are appointing him as an alternate member on the board for a 3-year term, and it's effective January 1st, 2025. I'll make a motion to move this nomination to our next council meeting.
Second.
Is there any question or comments about the nomination from the public? Okay, thank you. So this nomination is moved to our next council meeting on December 10th. Thank you, Madam President. That concludes the personnel committee.
Thank you very much, Councilor Clegg. We will move to our Public Safety Committee meeting, and in the absence of Councilor Diaz, Councilor Ahmed, if you would please chair that one.
Thank you, Council President. The Public Safety Committee does have one item on the agenda, Administration Resolution Number 92/2024, amending the fees for towing licenses. As the city is implementing new technology to increase its ability to administer its towing obligations and services, with the implementation of that new technology, the cost per tow will increase. And I believe Captain Zook is here to speak further on the resolution.
Good evening. A little bit of a background on it. The current software that we use was a program that was written by one of our former IT staff, probably 10, 15 plus years ago. It's no longer supported. Our current IT people have been doing their best to try to keep it running, but it's potentially going to crash at any time. We have certain amount of tow companies that pay the per year fee, and then if we have an accident or we have to do a police directed tow, we have to reach out to them. The current process is the officer that's out on the street will call in on the radio to one of our community service aides, request a tow. They have to go into the spreadsheet, look who's next, figure out who that is, make the phone call, and then that tow company will come out, and then they get bumped down to the bottom of the list, so it cycles through. Sergeant Hunsinger is our TAC officer. He works with our community service aides, with our dispatching, takes care of all of our infrastructure and so forth in the radio room. He has spent considerable time trying to find the best solution, and through all of his research going back for a good chunk of this year, he found this company that does this. It's an automated software. Actually, our officers will be able to have an app on their work phones, so if they need a tow, they can order it right on that app. And then it's almost like Uber. You can see where the tow truck is at when he's, coming to get the car. And that'll kind of keep track of everything. They can see what the estimated time is. So rather than calling back into the radio room, asking for, how long till they get there, he'll be able to see all that. So it's going to free up time for our community service aides. It's going to increase the efficiency of our officers. They're not going to have to be tied up as long. They'll be able to just basically push a button and have them come out. We tow approximately 2,500 cars a year. The cost for the software is around $20,000. So this per tow fee, in addition to the yearly license fee, will make that cost neutral for us.
Thank you, Captain Zook. And my only question is, so this is going to be a fee on the tow company, and then would that also increase the fees for the individual who may have their car towed?
Yeah, so this will be a fee to the tow company. I mean, realistically, I would assume that would get passed down to the owner of the car as well, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions from other members of the committee?
Councilman Ahmed, if I may.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Captain Zook, for that
Yes, sir.
presentation. Just a question about administering, does the city, and you may not have the answer off the top of your head, is the towing expense that we're talking about, this is for the city sees a need, like a car is parked on city property or something illegally needs to be towed away? Is that what you're talking about, or just any tow? You're talking purely about tows that are on city property or of interest to the city to address?
No, my understanding would be if there's a car blocking a fire hydrant that would need towed, or a car blocking a driveway that would need towed, that we would order a tow, that it would be for that. I'm not sure about on city lots and so forth, if that is under that or not. I don't know.
Yeah, sorry, I guess what I'm getting at is the difference between that and if it's a private lot, obviously it's on the owner of the private lot to call and get someone towed away.
Correct.
Because I guess what I'm wondering is is the cost to the city being covered by the towing that we are performing? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, I see that we're doing the $10 additional fee to cover the cost of the software, but is there an opportunity to possibly recoup some costs that we are otherwise eating now? And I'm realizing you may not have the answer to that off the top of your head, but I guess that's where my mind is going. I don't know.
I just to add on to that, I think that the towing so how many tow companies do we contract with?
It's in the 6 to 8
Yes,
that we do for
there's
these.
8 tow companies.
6 or 8, I'm sorry, 6.
6 or 8.
Yeah,
tow
in that
companies
range, yes.
that we rotate through so that when we're making calls, and we use those tow companies when we need to clear the streets for an event. When we have a snow emergency and we need to tow cars off of snow emergency route that have not moved in the amount of time that's been given. The kinds of tows that are Captain Zook's already described. And the process sounds chaotic in terms of what it was before. I think your question are there other ways that we can recoup costs that are associated with towing generally? And what I would say is that it is very difficult to recoup costs that are associated with our police and fire bureaus, because they, at the heart of what they're doing, is a public service. And so it's difficult, because they are to provide service to everyone, to figure out ways to get reimbursed. And so in the Fire Bureau, we're doing more around fires and submitting claims to insurance companies and getting some funding back for work that we might do on scene. But for the police, showing up at a car accident and, multiple cars are involved, or, it wasn't long ago that a car drove up the curb at Queen and Walnut, it had to be towed off the street, we're calling a tow truck for that.
No, thank you, that's helpful, because, all I was trying to get at with all that is, if the city, and it's helpful to think about the context under which someone is towed. Again, crashes happen, things happen. I guess I wouldn't want the city to be footing the bill for negligence, but I don't know. That's all I'm going with, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Hirsch. Are there any further questions or comments from full council? Council President.
Thank you. Captain Zook, you may not have this immediately at hand, but I would be curious to know, you mentioned that this particular software that you're currently using is 10 plus years old. Do you know when the last time that the fee was amended?
I don't.
Okay.
No, I think it's been stable for quite a while.
Long time?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the council? Hearing none, I make a motion to move resolution number 92, 2024 to our next full meeting of council on December 10.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Council President. That concludes the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you very much, Councilor Ahmed. The next item on our agenda is the Finance Committee. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight's Finance Committee has two items on the, on the agenda. Administration Bill number 13, 2024, setting the 2025 city sewer rates, and Administration Resolution number 97, 2024, setting the 2025 trash and recycling rates. We discussed both of these items in depth during the budget hearings. And we also have Michelle Bush here, who is joining us tonight to talk about the bill and resolution.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Starting off with the bill
How are you?
13.
Yes. Hello, how are you? So, as you've heard, back in October and November, Director Tina and Stephen Campbell have both explained that there would be a sewer rate increase inside for city customers. It's necessary to update this fee to align with our infrastructure and covering rising operational costs. The rate will go up 12%, which is about $5.25 per month for average customer. As the ordinance states, this rate will take effect in January 6, 2025.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. And just to clarify, the 12% is for residents with, or I'm sorry, sewer customers within city limits.
Yes, it is.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Full council? Any questions or comments from the public?
Hello.
Tony Dasher, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. I know that we have to go to the PUC for rate changes outside of the city. I'm just curious if there's any update on the status of rate changes for customers outside of the city.
Yes, we are looking at doing a rate case next quarter in 2025. Yes, we are working on that currently. We're getting prepared to do that. And then also at the solid waste hauling fees, their trash rates were also discussed in October and November at several budget presentations. The resolution will raise the solid waste hauling fees by 10%, which is about an $8 per quarter for the average residential customer. The increase is due to the ongoing rise of hauling and tipping fees that the city covers.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee or full council regarding the resolution number 97? Council President.
Thank you very much, Councilor Arroyo. Michelle, good evening. Can you give us an update? I always forget the timeline on this. When is the contract up for renegotiation for our haulers?
I will have to defer to Steve on that one. Do you have the date of when that?
And Director Campbell, as you're coming up, a second part of that question. These seem to be, as we've heard, kind of hard cost. Is there any room for negotiation on these particular fees when it comes time for a new contract?
Thank you very much for the question. I believe we're in year 2 of the renewal period. We took on this contract, I believe, at the end of 2020 or early 2021. It was a 3-year contract with 2 options for renewal, and we're in, I think, the second renewal period. There really are not any options for negotiation. We were very fortunate when we got this contract that we were not only competitive, but we got a very low price, And shortly thereafter, a year thereafter, the prices for hauling skyrocketed throughout the region. These are, under the contract, being able to pass on tipping fees and hauling fees is the one area where we don't have control, or the two areas where we don't have control over the rates that can be charged, because those get directly passed on to where the debris of refuse is taken to. If we do not pay those fees directly as prescribed, there's no other place for us to put the refuse. So it really is just a direct fee that passes on to on top of the hauling fee, the trash fees.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Director Campbell. Thank you, Council President. Any further questions or comments from the committee or full council? Any questions from the public?
.700 block New Holland Avenue, Tony Dastra. I forget who said it at one of the budget meetings, but I know that it was stated that roughly 50% of the revenues brought in from the recycling program down the street from me are lost because we have to rent space at Burl Industries. I'm just curious if you or Mr. Campbell can detail any of the city's more long-term plans on trying to recoup those costs or reduce the loss we take on them.
Thank you, Tony, for that question. I don't believe it's 50% of the revenue, but it is a good chunk of revenue that we are paying for rental of storage space for the recycling plant. As we described in our capital plan, we have a goal over the course of the next 2 to 5 years to find alternate storage location that would either be fully under the city's control and ownership, or would be a significantly lower cost but greater capacity. This, the solid waste management is potentially a growing concern, and potentially, if we can get the prices down, an opportunity to realize some profit in this area. It's a popular area. Many people in Lancaster and in the Lancaster area do like to recycle. The current space and capacity makes it difficult for us to realize a profit, as well as the fact that we have to pay for it. But yes, in the capital plan, the capital long-term plan, we are looking in these next few years to be able to find an alternate and/or more spacious opportunity to store and take care of the refuse.
Thank you, Director Campbell. Any further questions or comments from the public? Thank you, Ms. Bush, for the additional information.
Thank you.
For the committee, I'll take these items separately. I will move Administration Bill number 13, 2024 for first reading on December 10th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And also move Administration Resolution number 97, 2024 to full council on December 10th.
Second.
I'm sorry, it has to be Councilor Craig.
Councilor, please. I made the motion. It's just you and I tonight, Craig.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Council President. That concludes the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. We will now move to our community planning meeting this evening. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight. First being Administration Resolution number 95, authorizing a letter of intent for planning and design of the Environmental Center on the Sunnyside Peninsula. Good evening, Director Dellis.
Good evening, Councilor Craig. Hello, Council, Mayor. I did prepare a few remarks tonight in writing. It's been a while since we've talked about this particular project. It's an exciting one, and I just want to make sure I didn't miss any of the key highlights here. Okay. In October of last year, the city completed and adopted the first comprehensive plan in 30 years. One of the big ideas in the comp plan, entitled Our Future Lancaster, was to enhance community access to the Conestoga River. In order to help launch this bold vision, the comp plan called for a nature and recreation preserve at the north end of the Sunnyside Peninsula, anchored by an environmental center. The preserve and the environmental center are intended to serve as foundational community assets for generations to come. Seeking to make progress on comp plan implementation, city staff issued a request for proposals in November of 2023. The city received one response from Partners for Environmental Stewardship, a nonprofit organization sponsored by the High Foundation. In short, Partners for Environmental Stewardship, PES, offered to lead a master site planning process for the preserve and to build, operate, and maintain an environmental center of excellence within the preserve. City staff carefully reviewed the proposal and determined that it met the requirements of the RFP, and moreover, it would propel the policies and the actions laid out in the comprehensive plan. In January 2024, the city issued a conditional award letter to PES. It's been a little while since January of 2024. Since that time, PES has further established itself as an operational nonprofit, and last month hired a new executive director, Ms. Diana Martin, to lead the organization. In addition, city staff and PES continue to negotiate a letter of intent and a term sheet that set the parameters for a definitive agreement and a long-term lease, which will be finalized at a later time. The resolution that's before you this month in December is to authorize this letter of intent and approve the parameters within the letter of intent and term sheet. It's worth noting, while there has been a great deal of creativity and effort up until this point to get to this milestone, the work of PES is just getting started. Ultimately, PES is responsible for designing and constructing a world-class green building and establishing environmental education programs that serve city residents. Figuring out the design of the building, the nature and recreation preserve, and the community programs are all on the horizon, and that will continue to take a great deal of planning, cooperation, and engagement in the months and the years to come. If and when the City Council approves this resolution, the next step is to get the Sunnyside Preserve Master Plan underway. We've been waiting to do that. This structured master plan process will lead to more granular decisions about the physical improvements on the site and the community programming that will be connected to the environmental center and to the preserve. At this time, I welcome any questions you may have. I also would like to recognize Diana Martin and other representatives of PES and High in the audience here tonight. Thank them for being here. They're also on hand to provide additional information and context as needed.
Thank you, Director Dobbs. I'm so excited that I could probably jump out of this chair. I don't have it. We've been talking about the Sunnyside Peninsula for 10, 15 years plus. So I'm just a little bit. So are there any questions from the committee?
No questions, Councilor Craig, but just a comment. I'm also very excited about this project to come forward. I know it's still very early in the stages here, but as you mentioned, it's probably been decades since there's been eyes on this piece of land, especially in the southeast of Lancaster City, and the opportunity to make it something special for the residents of that community, I think can be a really great, I'd say turning point, but I think an advancement and enhancement for our city and for everyone. So very excited to see this come forward. I would love to hear from Ms. Diana Martin about, the vision and what she sees the future of this potential project being, if she's so willing.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Councilor Arroyo, and thank you to all the councilors and Mayor Sirachi for having us this evening. My name's Diana Martin. I'm both a longtime city resident, 200 block of East Chestnut Street, if you want to put it in the books. I'm also the new executive director of Partners for Environmental Stewardship. And as Chris mentioned, I'm joined by two members of our board of directors, John Cox and Tony Seitz this evening. It's really our honor. I think I share a lot of the emotion that you showed, Commissioner Craig. It's really an honor to be here this evening as we finalize this letter of intent that'll allow our organization to move forward with developing a master site plan for the city of Lancaster for a nature preserve on Sunnyside Peninsula, as well as to design and construct the environmental center. As Chris mentioned, this project really is bringing to life a key component of the city's new comprehensive plan, which after 14,000 interactions with city residents, identified the Conestoga River as a key opportunity and called for this environmental center. This project represents a really significant investment in the city of Lancaster, and we know it'll bring transformational impact. Our goals include restoring the ecological health of the peninsula, providing recreational opportunities like hiking and kayaking, and I think the part that me and many of us are most excited for is also offering educational and workforce learning opportunities for both city residents and the broader community and public around environmental issues. One of the exciting elements of this project is the opportunities for collaboration. We're going to work very closely with the City of Lancaster to bring the Preserve and Environmental Center to life. As Chris mentioned, you'll see me in just a few short months as we put together the definitive agreement. I think you might be a little sick of seeing me as we get through some of the steps of making this a reality. We have 7 leading environmental organizations who have agreed to have a presence or call the new center home because they see our vision for making nature accessible for all and making Lancaster a hub for environmental excellence. We're able to embark on this work because of a visionary gift from the High Foundation that will enable us to do this as a world-class project. But ultimately, this is going to be the community's environmental center. So our goal is to engage as many community voices as possible as we bring the Preserve, the center, and the programming to life. One of the first things that we'll do, we plan to deliver a community engagement plan this spring. It'll outline all the intentional ways that we plan to bring neighbors, youth, other nonprofit organizations, non-English speakers, the School District of Lancaster, and so many other stakeholders into this project, and really exciting work so that hopefully one day when we break ground, we'll have a whole sea of people that represent the community that are just as excited as Councilor Craig was this evening. So I think that's what we want to see ultimately when we break ground and eventually open the environmental center to the community. So thank you all for your leadership and your work moving this project forward, and I really look forward to our continued partnership and any other questions that you have for us this evening.
Thank you.
Councilor Craig, thank you so much, and thank you to all of you who are here tonight that worked really hard to get to this point. I just want to make a mention, it's not a question, it's more of a comment. The letter of intent is lengthy. It's probably the longest letter of intent I've ever seen. But that is not, just because we wanted to say a lot of words about it. When you read it, it does have a baked-in engagement plan with the city overview to ensure that the benchmarks that you spoke of are hit. Requires continued reports to council all along the way, which is, I think, something that we've all, as members of council, appreciated for the projects of this scale, and has actually established an actual timeline for a programming plan. So while those things may need a lot more refinement, there is a plan to bring them forward continuously throughout this project. And I appreciate that and just wanted to make note of that to all of you this evening. So thank you.
Thank you, President Bakay.
Are there any further questions from council as a whole? Questions, comments from the public?
These are questions, so you may want. Tim Stuhldreher, One United Lancaster. Couple of questions. Number one, this is being described, I guess, as sort of a preliminary agreement to another agreement. So my question is, what other at what further points will this come before City Council for additional action? And then it looks as though the cost of the project will be borne by the nonprofit. Just want to confirm that the intent is that there would be no costs to the city or to city taxpayers.
Those are directed to me, right? I can address those.
So your first question is, tonight we're looking at a letter of intent, which is a non-binding agreement. In the letter of intent, it outlines that we have a 60-day period to move forward with the definitive agreement. So that will be coming before City Council, hopefully in the next 2 months here, if we're keeping with that timeline. The other thing that you mentioned is in the letter of intent, you can see right now our projected cost for the project, which will continue to refine over time, is $36 million. That project is funded with some seed funding from the High Foundation. About $10 million has been committed from the High Foundation. The rest of the funds for that project will come from fundraising that we do at Partners for Environmental Stewardship, so potentially state and federal grants, other foundations, and major donors. So all of that to say you are correct. None of this cost will be borne by the City of Lancaster.
And what is the scope of the $36 million project? Is Environmental Center and what?
Yes, so that it would be the design, construction for the Environmental Center, as well as preparing a master site plan for the nature preserve. You're welcome.
Anything? I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Did I see Mr. Dastra?
Well, actually, I have a couple questions. Where on the peninsula will this environmental center be? Because the peninsula is fairly large, and I was informed a couple weeks ago that someone's planning on building homes, 80 homes, also on the peninsula. So question number one, where's it going to be? Question number two, are you planning on incorporating the quarry that's already there, that's full of water? In your environmental studies, are you going to be doing that?
Ms. Reeves, if you could just come a little closer to the microphone, just so that you could be heard in the room.
Oh, I'm
on
sorry.
the live stream, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. And I think we have some other folks that'll be able to answer these questions.
Question number one was, where is it going to be on the peninsula? Question number two is if they're going to incorporate the quarry that's already out there. And the last question, how is it going to affect traffic coming on to South Broad Street?
Thank you for the question. I'll take the first one related to location of the master site plan for the preserve. There's a total of about 70 acres, including the quarry is owned by the city. The Youth Intervention Center actually sits in the middle of that 70 acres, and that Youth Intervention Center land is owned by the county. But for the 70 acres around the YIC, that is the land that we're talking about for the preserve master planning process. You also mentioned a land development project that has been proposed. There's about 10 acres just south of the 70 acres that is there's a new owner of that land who's proposed land development, a number of residences, you're correct, and they're at the very early stages of going before the Planning Commission. So I do think that City Council and the public will hear more about that at a later date, and also please feel free to connect with me or any member of the Planning Bureau for more information about the other development. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. There you are.
Tony Dastra, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. I also am looking forward to the center, but to kind of correlate to your questions, as a planning commissioner, I want to say I was concerned with the proposal that you were referring to. And generally, I feel right now the Planning Commission needs additional support. I understand we lost a great one in Douglas, and that can somewhat hold things up. But one of the comments that was given for that proposal was that we haven't updated zoning ordinances yet. Now, while I am very much in support of a project like this, the project that I feel we were proposed was not conducive to the eco district that was proposed in the comprehensive plan. So I'm hoping that with the knowledge that there's a site ready for development and the idea that we want to do an eco district there, I'm hoping we can see support from the nonprofit community to potentially make it more of a mixed income area that's going to be developed down there, because otherwise I'm concerned that the housing that's been proposed will potentially make it economically out of reach forever for certain stratus of the of our economy. So that being said, the Planning Commission needs some additional support so that this area specifically can have a more concerted effort that doesn't exclude people from ever being able to afford to live in those zones, because one of the comments was we're not building McMansions down there, but it's very monoculture, it's very car-centric, and as a planning commissioner, I'm struggling to understand how it fits into an eco district. So before the other plans around move forward, I'm hoping this can spur a conversation how we can really hone in on this area to make it more equitable for all people, because 1 year for the next 100, right? Thank you very much.
Are there any further questions from the public? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to move resolution number 95, 2024 to full council on the 10th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next on the list is administration resolution number 96, amending the official sewage facilities plan to include Price Elementary School.
Hello again. I'll start with an apology that you have already actually voted on this item. If it sounds familiar, you are not going crazy. Thank you for your forbearance. We actually took action on the sewer planning module, or I should say you as council took action on the sewer planning module a little bit too early. We had not yet gotten approval from county. So our order of operations was a little bit in reverse, so we just have to take another vote to affirm what you have already decided. Just as a reminder, our city staff have confirmed that there is sewer capacity available for the redevelopment of the Price Elementary School, as discussed the last time.
Thank you, Director Dulles. We are efficient.
Yes, too efficient this time. Apologies again.
Are there any questions from the committee? Questions from the public?
No, Councilor Craig, if I may. Director Dulles, very quickly, you mentioned we saw it before. Have there been any changes to the scope of the plan since we saw it last?
Thank you for asking, President Bakay. There have not been any changes to the plan at this point. There are some additional steps that are happening with this project in the near future related to land development approvals and also some zoning actions as well. The sewer planning module is coming earlier than those because there's a long lead time for state review, and the leaders of this project wanted to make sure that was done and didn't serve as a barrier or hold up for the project at a later time.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any questions from the public? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to move resolution number 96 to full council on the 10th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Last item on our agenda this evening is Administration Bill number 14, reappropriating unused American Rescue Plan Act funds for city home repair programs.
Okay, thank you again. I'm going to try to keep the ball rolling since I'm already up here. Thank you. There is a possibility I may call up Mr. Handwer or Ms. Geiser to fill in any details if you have specific questions. To start with, an overview of this particular bill, the intent here is to what I would call just in case. We have ARPA funds that have been awarded to a set of affordable housing projects and community facilities projects. We are currently, city staff and our consultant team are actively working with all of those grant awardees to try to ensure that the funds are spent and that the projects are completed. In the event that any of those grant recipients are not able to meet the requirements of their grant awards, essentially what this bill does is provide us the authority to move those funds to the city's critical repair program. The idea is we're hopeful that if we have to shift those funds at the last minute to critical repair, that we're still able to spend them on city projects and not lose that federal money.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee?
Thank you, Councilor Gregg. Good evening, Director Das. How much of this fund is being allocated to this program?
Specifically to critical repair program?
Yeah.
So if I may, I'll answer that question in two ways. City Council actually did allocate some ARPA funding, $300,000 to the critical repair program back in, I think it was May of this year. It was the first half of 2024. I'm happy to report we've actually already expended that $300,000. We had a long waiting list for those critical repair households and projects. So that ARPA money, the $300,000, has been spent. The bill that's before you this month, we're not sure exactly how much money could flow to the critical repair program. It depends on if any of those projects fell through. So it's hard for me to answer exactly the amount, but we're probably talking in the range of a couple $100,000 perhaps.
Is this going to be a one-time reallocation or?
Yes, that is the intent, is if any singular project does not come to fruition, that those funds would then move to the critical repair program. It is possible that more than one project wouldn't come to fruition, and if that were the case, that it could be more than one.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council as a whole?
Councilor Craig, if I may. Weird question. Is it possible if multiple of the awardees are not able to meet and spend the ARPA, is it almost possible that we'd have too much allocated to this particular program? And should the city consider affordable housing development? Is that an eligible use or?
That's a great question, and we've spoken about that internally. At this point, I'm feeling confident that we can spend the money through the critical repair program. Our Office of Healthy Homes has done incredible work over the last year in particular. Just to give you a sense, they've done about 140 households for the lead program and almost 40 households for the critical repair. So even if we were at the upper limits of funding that could come to the critical repair program, I feel confident that we could spend that money. I would also say that this money has to be designated before the end of 2024, and essentially we have to pick a program or a use that's queued up and able to spend that money quickly. So we thought this was the best practical solution.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Director Delps.
Thank you.
So, Director Delps, we have to have some kind of deadline. So I'm aware of the deadline that the awardees have. So this is just putting something in place so that if something does go wrong with one or two of the awardees, that we have some place to put the funds that will essentially not have it go back.
Yes, that's exactly right. Is we're offering this bill forward as a form of a safety net so that we can try to use it for other, for the benefit of city residents and that it doesn't flow back to the federal government.
So what kind of deadline does that leave us with?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
What kind of deadline does that leave us with?
Any funding has to be designated before the end of 2024, so we're almost at that deadline now. For any projects where money is already designated, the funding has to be spent by the end of 2026.
Okay. I don't think that's what I meant. So the awardees have until December 31st before to have their funds committed, correct?
No.
Come on up, Barry.
The awardees are all under contract. Their contracts can allow for the use of funds over the next 2 years. This ordinance is intended to cover if for whatever reason any of those projects don't come to fruition and there's money that either is unspent or doesn't get utilized in the way their contracts require. So no, there was no requirement that they complete their projects by the same date we have to allocate it.
No, that's not what I meant. What I meant was their funds not being committed.
All of the funds with the ARPA ordinances before you tonight will be committed by the end of this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any questions from the public?
One more question.
Yes. Yep. Sorry.
This is Tony Dastra, 700 block New Holland Avenue. Actually, to the point of fund allocation and the need to allocate these funds by the last day of this year, I believe, I have a request for council relating to, because the next three are all American Rescue Act, so I figured I might as well just come up here. We're talking about a project and the necessity to allocate these funds now, so it's tangentially related, because you may decide other things with these funds, I don't know. I have no opposition to investing in the Joe Jackson Tot lot, but I think that we are missing an opportunity with ARPA funds right now. Tenfold, for example, just opened an emergency shelter at their garage facility. City of Lancaster still owns Station 6. We should be allocating funds to turn Station 6 into a warming shelter or otherwise a homeless shelter. There's an urgent need right now. A lot of members of the public are uncomfortable with the sweeps. I understand there's a tight timeline, but we need to act bravely on this matter. So I'm pretty close to begging you guys to do something with Station 6 to help people who are hurting out here. I understand we can't help everybody. There are limits to our resources, but we can hold the property. It's likely property values are going to continue to go up. I think creating a place for people to go in a lack of capacity is something we really need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. I'm going to revert to Councilor Colleagues.
I'm not sure who would answer this question. And why were these ARPA funds unused?
Thank you, sir, for the question. I'm going to echo something that Barry said, but just change his wording just slightly.
Yeah.
He said that the funds will be committed. These ARPA funds are already committed. They're already obligated. So you may remember that there was $5 million in total that were allocated to housing projects. All of those projects are under contract, and our hope and intent is that all of those projects are completed and the money is spent. But if the money is not spent, then the money would change tracks and go to the critical repair program instead. So that's why I had referred to it as a just-in-case bill.
Understood. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilor May.
Thank you, Councilor Craig. Just once again, just to clarify this is an acting measure to make sure that these funds don't go back into the ether of the IRS.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Councilor Schroeder.
Councilor Craig, while Mr. Studrayer makes his way up, if I could just make a comment. Also, and just being part of some of these discussions, part of the reason why the allocation towards critical repairs is because it stays very much in line with the intention by council to invest ARPA dollars within affordable housing projects or affordable housing initiatives. So this still stays true to council's intention for investing these dollars in that way. So just wanted to add that point.
Tim Stuhlder, One United Lancaster. Two questions. First, the funds must be spent by the end of 2026, and I can imagine that if you find out mid-November of 2026 that a project is not going to be completed, that could make it challenging to spend them. So are there arrangements with the current recipients to get sufficient advance notice? And then second, has the city confirmed with the U.S. Treasury that this procedure is doable and that the subsequent decision in 2025 is not the quote-unquote commitment that has to happen by the end of this year?
All of the contracts require for quarterly reporting. The city is required to quarterly report the status of all those projects. So yes, they're actively being tracked. The city has a consultant team that works with each of the recipients. As to whether this ordinance will actually be effective in 26 or 25, that is a great unknown. As you're well aware, the administration at the federal government has changed. The final revenue rule has been changed by my count at least 11 times. They have the authority to continue changing regulations. So again, we're doing this as a means of, quite frankly, trying to put the city in the best position it could possibly be in if and only if something goes wrong with one of the existing contracts.
Thank you so much. Did I see somebody else on council that had a question? No? Okay. I'll make a motion to move Administration Bill number 14 to full council on the 10th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Council President, that concludes community planning.
Thank you very much, Councilor Craig. We will now move to our Public Works Committee meeting. Councilor Hirsch.
Thank you, Council President. Public Works Committee has two items on our agenda tonight, the first of which is Administration Resolution number 93, adopting the Parks Master Plan. And I believe Mr. Carl Rabel will be presenting on the Parks Master Plan.
Oh. Under your display. And Mr. Grable, as you are getting set up there, just make sure, yep, and then green light, perfect, thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you for for this opportunity. I apologize for if there was a misunderstanding and you did not previously get a copy of the final Comprehensive Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan. That plan was made available at the beginning of November. It was online on the Engage platform, and it was to be available to you for the November meeting. This presentation was postponed to this meeting, so I'm not sure what had happened there, but that was made available previously. This project began in 2023. It was, I see that I have my notes up there also. Caption, sorry, I was distracted. But it started in 2023. We hired a consultant team to help us work through this. That consultant team was Evolve Studio, WSP, Connect the Dots, and Merit Chase. We also formed a steering committee to assist us through this process. That's not working either. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here today. So we had, the first thing that we did with the consulting team was to develop a mission and a vision. The vision of the plan is that we envision a healthy, happy, and engaged community brought together by recreation, parks, and open space. And the mission would be that we provide parks and recreation services to enhance the quality of life for Lancaster residents and visitors by connecting people to nature, providing recreation opportunities, and promoting civic engagement with the ownership of the parks and open space. There were 4 parts of the plan itself: the introduction and context, system analysis, recommendations, and implementation plan. And I'll go through those as we move through this presentation. 6 project goals. They included sustainability, to create a 10-minute walk to a high-quality park. The City of Lancaster, 98% of the residents of the City of Lancaster are within a 10-minute walk of a park or open space area. The intent of this planning effort was to create high-quality parks that are connected, sustainable, accessible, adaptable parks, and open space to accommodate current and future needs, and to make our parks resilient. It was an extensive public engagement process that started in the spring of 2023. Our first engagement activity was at Open Streets in 2023. There were more than 1,000 people directly engaged through this process. That means that we actually spoke to them. They took surveys. We had a number of neighborhood events, pop-up activities, stakeholder interviews, focus groups, workshops, and then the Engage Lancaster platform was online through the entire process. The first part, we needed to know what the park and recreation situation was. So we did a systems analysis. Consultant team evaluated staffing, budget, and funding, and compared that to the National Recreation and Parks Association standards, as well as similar cities such as Harrisburg and Bethlehem. And as you can see, Lancaster comes in somewhere okay. There was the Lancaster total is within the upper quartile, but it was a little bit less. I think the next slide there. shows that Lancaster is, for expenditures, for budgeting, is a little bit less than Harrisburg and Bethlehem, but it does meet some of the standards. Also looked at the amenities and facilities, and, such as the basketball courts, playgrounds, tennis courts, or dog parks. And we have a lot of facilities, and also looked at, through that process, also looked at some of the facilities that we don't have that we should consider, such as community gardens, skate parks, and pickleball courts. And then the size and distribution was also analyzed. And you can see here where the larger parks are geographically. The northwest extension, that would include like Longs Park. Northeast extension would include Conestoga Pines Park, so that's why those have such large numbers. The southeast shown here has a small number, has several parks in this, but they're all small. So the distribution is not evenly throughout the city. Each of the quadrants were, brief profile was done for each part of the city, the 4 quadrants, extensions in downtown, and these included school district facilities as well as cemeteries, county parks, if there were any county parks like County Park in the south side, as well as some parks we looked at just outside the city, Stauffer Park, Community Park. So this was a type of profile that was done for each of the different quadrants. And then a profile was prepared for every city park in the system. Only city parks, though. We didn't do profiles for the outside parks. And there was some the criteria that we based this scoring on was there were seven criteria. Stewardship, that looked at is the park clean and well maintained. Sustainability, does the park contribute to stormwater management and growing the urban forest? Programming and activities, how many types of uses and programs are available in the parks? Amenities, are there a variety of amenities available and what is their condition? Is the park welcoming and relevant? Does the park appear inviting and welcoming? Is it comfortable to spend time in? Connectivity, access, and accessibility. Is it safe to walk or bike to the park? Can it be accessed by public transit? And safety, is the park visible from the street and well integrated into the neighborhood? Does it feel safe? Are adjacent land uses compatible with the park? So those were the 7 criteria that each park was measured to. So then we moved into the recommendations. Recommendations were prioritized based on the needs identified through the public engagement process and the consultant's analysis of the existing parks. All parks will be updated over time as equipment or safety surfaces need to be maintained. The plan includes a number of strategies to ensure that maintenance staff are focused on doing maintenance. And in addition to regular maintenance, several parks are in need of significant upgrades. Reservoir Park needs an update and master plan. Currently, planning is going on in the East End Small Area Plan, which includes the county prison site. Separate Reservoir Park master plan project should align with the small area plan, so both are considered. And then there's 3 southeast parks are in need of significant upgrades. And that's Joe Jackson Tot Lot, Yule Gantz Playground in South End Park, and we've already started working on implementing upgrades and redesign of those parks. South Duke Street Mall has planned improvements to the street and sidewalk area. That's the South Duke Street Mobility Project. And so that we should also take a look at that to consider if there's opportunities to create more pocket park space along the Duke Street Mall, better serve that community, as well as Conestoga Pines master plan, Conestoga Pines Park master plan. That was just completed this past year. We also applied for funding to start implementing that plan, looking at developing the trails that were identified in the master plan. Improve infrastructure is another recommendation. Certain upgrades are needed across the entire system to make sure that parks have infrastructure to make them comfortable and safe to use, including water fountains, bottle filling stations, lighting, more restrooms, longer hours for restrooms, so that the restrooms can be open when people use the parks. That's evenings and weekends. They're currently not open at that time. Converting wading pools to spray grounds. That would provide several advantages. They can be operated longer hours than wading pools, including the evenings and weekends. They can be open earlier in the season to stay open later in the season. Lancaster Rec provides recreation programming. We have an unusual system here in Lancaster. The city provides the maintenance, owns the facilities and provides maintenance for facilities. Lancaster Recreation Commission provides the programming for those facilities. So it's a little unusual. So the wading pools are staffed by Lancaster Recreation Commission, and they're only open a short window during the summer months. And if we all recall how hot it was this past summer, spray grounds provide an opportunity for all ages and all people in the neighborhoods to cool down, to cool off at any time. They don't have to be staffed. We have a problem with kids and not just kids, but people climbing over the fence after hours and going into the pools. So this would eliminate that those problems. The opportunity for new parks, we don't have a lot of opportunities for new parks. One of the things that was noticed as the consultants were looking at our system was that there's a number of small parks that were kind of afterthoughts, or the city acquired a piece of land and decided to turn it into a park. So we have these very small parks that don't provide a broad variety of amenities. Yule Gant's Playground is one of those. It provides really just the seating area and some play equipment for the neighborhood. And that's great, but the neighborhood could use some more full facility parks. So we identified the opportunity to work with the planning of the East End and the future where the current prison is, and see what opportunities might arise there. Conestoga Pines Park Pool is in a floodplain area. It needs major upgrades. It's difficult for most people in the city to get to. People without a car cannot get to Conestoga Pines Pool. It's the only public pool that the city is within the city limits. There is a pool down in County Park. And to centrally locate a new pool, is there an opportunity for the prison site? So the consideration should be for that that small area plan, the East End small area plan, take into consideration and the opportunity for more additional recreation space in that area. And engaging in new ways. There's a couple opportunities here for having staff dedicated to engaging with the public through a park ambassador program. Manheim Township Parks just established this recently. The image here of the The park ambassadors, that is Manheim Township staff. They work different hours, so it would be available for weekends as well as possibly in the evening when city staff isn't available. So they could assist people with questions or with minor park maintenance. And also a wayfinding opportunity, more signage to direct people to where the, have a comprehensive multilingual signage program would make parks more welcoming and inform people about the park system, include a map as well as in multiple languages as well as handouts. City should also consider having its own greenhouse. This would provide opportunities for training, community service, as well as green infrastructure. We do a lot of our green infrastructure has plantings in, so this would be an opportunity for us to grow our own. Other new park opportunities, in addition to the conversion of the spray parks to see if there's opportunities for additional spray parks. We already have a spray park right downtown, Binns Park. It's kind of works that way. You notice it during the summer months, there's people that are in that park. Not sure if this is, I know down in Philadelphia by City Hall in Philadelphia, they have, Dilworth Park just added some spray water features there for the summer months. Natural play areas is another recommendation, as well as creating skate park and a bike track or pump track that we currently don't have any of those amenities in the city at this time. It's important to point out that all of our planning efforts are coordinated and collaborative. This plan aligns with our Future Lancaster, the Active Transportation Plan, the Green Infrastructure Plan, and the Vision Zero Action Plan. Its recommendations coordinate with the initiatives of Sunnyside, as we just heard. It's important to do that, as well as the East End Small Area Plan. In addition to improving connections along safer streets, the plan recommends that gateways should be created where the streets connect to Lancaster County Central Park and Sunnyside to provide safe and clear entry points to these parks for pedestrians and cyclists. And that's visible on the map there, both of those in the southeast. Final part of the plan was implementation, project prioritization. There's 3 tiers to the implementation, in a sense, short, medium, and long term. And the tier 1 prioritization, they're looked at 4 different areas. Community priority reflects the needs and priorities expressed through the community engagement process. Equity is based on the project's ability to address inequities or imbalances in the system, for example, by improving or creating parks in underserved areas and addressing existing needs and gaps. Technical or safety needs is when equipment or other materials need to be replaced or upgraded, are in an unsafe condition, or projects that address and identified safety need, and projects were scored based on their estimated cost to implement and funding needs. So identified opportunities for, Reservoir Park came out with a high priority, splash pad conversions, infrastructure upgrades, such as the water fountains and lighting. The 3 southeast parks, mentioned those. Joe Jackson Tot Lot, the condition of the play equipment is in such dire straits that it needs to be removed. So that will be under construction, hopefully in 2025. The equipment will be removed through the winter. Then it was a funding matrix, identified funding opportunities and sources, such as the DCNR's, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. They have a community conservation partnership program that we've taken advantage of such as for the planning of this park or for the development of a number of parks. DCD's Greenway Trails and Recreation Program. That was, we applied for that for the trail implementation recently at Conestoga Pines Park. We're still waiting to hear if that's been approved. And then the DEP's Growing Greener program are some examples of opportunities there. And we have received grants from all of those in the past, continue to do that. Tier 1 projects, we identified the scope and schedule for each park project, such as Reservoir Park, and it was summarized here, and looking at what those recommendations are and how it should move forward on the process. And I will take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grable, for the presentation. I do have one question, but I actually want to ask it after other questions are heard, so I will open it up to the committee and full of council if you have any questions or comments. Council President.
Thank you. Mr. Grable, thank you very much. Two questions. One doesn't have a clear answer, but I guess just sort of to make a point. The funding matrix at the end is kind of like where the rubber meets the road. If federal funding opportunities significantly change, does that impact our ability to get this plan done within the timeline?
I don't know. I know that a lot of the funding that we have is state funding. Mm-hmm. So we do, and we match that with bond funding or other, if we are able to do that. I believe most of the funding that we have in the past has been state funding. I know that there's resolution next for using some of the ARPA funds for one of the 3 Southeast Park projects. So, but that's, I would ask if Steve or Cindy could elaborate more on that, but I believe that mostly we use state funding for that. And I mentioned those 2 grants that we get.
That's my impression based on the funding matrix and just my experience on council is that a lot of those are state funds. I'm just curious what the kind of mix really looks like in terms of actual dollars. There was fewer dots on that matrix from federal, but were they larger pools of funds?
So I want to reiterate what Carl is saying. A lot of our funds do come from the state level, but to the extent that some of those state funds are supported by federal dollars, that may have an impact. The import of a master plan is that it sets the general direction and impacts that need to be fulfilled or need to be addressed. So in a worst case scenario, or the worst case that I'd like to contemplate scenario, it means that it might be a little bit delayed. There might be a slight delay in terms of the work getting done. But the prioritization of which parks get done first, which parks get augmented in the way described would remain the same because that is the nature of doing the capital plan. The one possible exception may be the relationship of the East End small area plan and its implications for Reservoir Park. Reservoir Park is the last of the parks from the last master planning effort to be done, and it would literally be the first large park to be undertaken under this plan, with the exception of the 3 South End parks, Southeast parks, I guess.
Thank you. And a second question, just out of curiosity, I know there was a little bit of confusion about when we received the full plan. I know it's on Engaged, it says draft. Is the draft that's posted that we have available to us, does that go on to, there was a working group of members of the community, and I believe they had the opportunity to give comment. Is that come back? Is that in the final form since then?
That should be the final plan that is there. Following the comment, we had comment period in October, and we prepared a final plan that was put onto the Engage site, as well as there was a link shared. Or again, I apologize for not getting it, not making sure it got to you at the beginning of November. That has been online since November on the Engage site, and that's the final plan. That was vetted through the staff as well as the steering committee.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Councilor Craig.
So I've heard two plans for Reservoir Park that could potentially happen. The upgrades for Reservoir Park, and also a few slides back, there was a potential to put a pool in Reservoir Park. A regular size pool, because, a while ago, remember we talked about Conestoga Pines pool closing and possibly that pool there being moved to Reservoir Park. So if Reservoir Park is going to have upgrades and things like that done and money spent on the upgrades, will that include a pool, or will the pool come later, or will the upgrades be destroyed by the pool?
The third option would not be the case. We would not be installing something and then destroy.
I would hope not, but I need to ask.
I know you have to ask, and it is not something that has not happened in the past in other areas as well. The intention here is that ideally there would be a larger scale municipal pool that would be available and more centrally located. The municipal pool that we have at Conestoga Pines is a shallow pool. It is below standards, et cetera. It has the floodplain that it's dealing with. The intention is that hopefully, with the East End small area plan, there may be the identification of the opportunity to install a municipal scale pool in addition to or in conjunction with whatever the prison site is contemplated to be. At this particular moment, although it's still a possibility, it's not intended that one would take up more of the Reservoir Park space for that pool unless it's in a concerted plan created in that small area plan.
If I could add, just the recommendation here is that Reservoir Park be master plan, that before we do anything with Reservoir Park, it has to go through its own planning process, similar to what we had done with Conestoga Pines Park. Because of the importance of Reservoir Park to the city, it is the largest centrally located park in the city. There's some competing uses or conflicting uses that potentially for there. It's a potential fair or festival space.
Basically, the only one of our good-sized parks that has the capability of being used as a fairground type park.
So, it's going to be important that space is planned appropriately. We will also look to see where there's opportunities, if there's other opportunities to locate a full-size pool more centrally located and more accessible to more of the population.
Thank you. I have one last question. As we were going through the slides, you mentioned that on some of the the wading pools currently a good reason to turn them into a
Spray.
park?
Spray grounds.
Place? Okay, all right. Well, a good reason to turn them into a spray ground is that currently you're having issues with people climbing over the fence after the parks have closed. So, is there a plan, or has it been talked about with making a more municipal park, either at Reservoir Park or the prison site? Is there talk about how that's going to be prevented in that location?
That would be planned, that would be part of the plan, identifying if a pool would be decided, wherever a pool would go, that would be part of that planning of that, to secure it, make sure it's secure, make sure it's safe. Right now, our pools all the wading pools are, I think the maximum depth is about 3 feet, 2.5 or 3 feet. Doesn't mean that you can't drown in 2.5 feet. But a full-size pool would be much deeper also. So it'd have to be even more secure. And we have fences, we have 6-foot fences around all our pools, and people still climb over that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Craig. Are there any other questions or comments from either the Public Works Committee or Council as a whole? I'm going to open this up to the public as well, if anyone has comments or questions.
Hold off, Dasper, I'm going first.
Hey guys, Rob Reed, 600 block of North Shippen Street. I'm on the Parks, Recreation, and Open Spaces Steering Committee as well. Carl, thanks for including the skate parks in your slide. I appreciate that. So just for a little bit of context, I was a part of that comment timeline in October. Reached out this morning to the rest of the committee and said, hey, when are we going to get the final draft of this before it goes out to the public? And I learned, tonight it's being presented to council. I understand it was on the Engage platform. I wasn't available, or I didn't realize that. I don't engage with that platform on a regular basis, so didn't notice that. So just got a chance to review that final version today. I saw that maybe a couple of my comments in there made a change for the final draft. I'd really like to see a lot more. For a little context, some of you might know I've been on this high horse about skate parks for about a decade right now, and I keep getting told there's another plan we got to do. We got to do a comprehensive plan. We got to do a part plan for this one. We got to do this big plan for it, and it gets delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. And the timeline for Reservoir Park in this plan is 8 to 10 years. We can't wait 8 to 10 years for a skate park in Lancaster City. And I know we're talking about not building something and then demolishing it in 10 years, but there's an opportunity to build something temporarily in Reservoir Park on that old hockey rink. You could spend $5,000 and build a box and a quarter pipe and a bank and give something for kids in the city to skateboard, which they don't have. My other big gripe about the plan, and I'm on my high horse about it again, is that rubric for how they're evaluating priority. Skate parks were gauged to be low priority for equity and low priority for safety. I completely disagree with that. I have the privilege of being able to drive to a skate park in Lidditz, in Manheim Township, in York, in Reading, any of these places. I can drive to those skate parks whenever I want. A kid in the city can't do it. That makes it an equity issue. There's not a skate park in the city for a kid to go to, so their only choice is to skate in a business, in the street, somewhere they're probably not supposed to be. That is a safety issue. I don't see how it can be rated a low priority for safety when it just makes kids go skate in the street. Anyway, those are all parts of my comments. I haven't had a chance to review the rest of it. I'd like a little bit more time before you vote on it. I would also like to know a little bit more about the process for incorporating comments, because I just kind of put my comments out into the ether and then suddenly saw the final plan. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Tony Dastra, 700 block New Holland Avenue. I agree with a lot of those sentiments, especially about the riding in the street. Problems are wicked. The reason I came up here, though, to comment on this plan is because I think that there's an opportunity with our parks that often gets discarded rapidly because of a fear and anxiety. Look, parks aren't leveraged at night. You probably get a sense of where I'm going with this, maybe. Back in 2001, I expressed opposition to banning sleeping in parks. I'm coming to you today not with something super solid, but we really need to be having robust conversations about all public property and our ability to leverage them. The last thing I really want is people sleeping outside. I'm not trying to encourage Hoovervilles here, but we have to be real about the crisis we're in. And I think that there's an eagerness in the city to leverage our facilities. We need to leverage our citizens who are eager about this and figure out a strategy so we can leverage our parks that go underutilized at night in a safe way for the people who are really genuinely looking to find reprieve and are serious about it. Like I said, I'm not going to pitch a whole big plan right here because I've spoken plenty tonight, but I think we really need to be incorporating how we can leverage our parks to give someone a level of reprieve. Like, I don't want someone sleeping outside at night in the winter, but I'm sure that they would rather know where they're sleeping at all than worry about getting swept. So, yeah, I agree with Mr. Reed's comments. The plan in general, like, I enjoy the direction this is heading in. I like the splash parks especially because Sixth Ward Park's wading pool is sometimes a frustration for me being up there because it's just a giant fence in the middle of the park and it's obstructing. And I would also encourage the city to reach out to an organization called PRPS if you haven't. It's a great starting point if you would like to get a small grant. In general, there's other peer support there. 80% of Americans, I believe, is a stat, support recreation spending in general across party lines. It's a very nonpartisan issue, so the fact that we're talking more about this and potentially talking about investing more in our parks is a great thing for all Lancastrians. That was a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. Tim Stuhlter, One United Lancaster. Once again, two questions. First, would this Parks Master Plan potentially lead to any sustained increase in annual operating expenses for the city?
Currently, as I mentioned, the city owns and maintains the parks. I would imagine that there's increasing costs for just maintenance.
Yeah,
naturally.
I mean, over and above that, the park ambassadors, presumably those folks would have to be paid.
Yes, they would have to be paid unless they were volunteers. That could be something that would be taken on by potentially by Lancaster Recreation Commission as part of the programming. We could look at that also if the city would want to go in that direction. Of course, we would identify how it would be paid for.
Okay. And second question, what thought has been given or what thought will be given to if a pool goes into Center City, Reservoir Park, or nearby, how would that relate to the offering of the Lancaster County Pool, which is less than 1.5 miles away? Would a marketing study be done to determine that both pools would be viable and have sufficient attendance or something along those lines?
Exactly. Before a pool would be established, it would be, again, another plan, another study to make sure what kind of pool, the size of the pool, the location of the pool, and the need. We identified with the Conestoga Pines Park Master Plan, there were two options. One is to upgrade the pool, keep it in its location, or relocate it somewhere else in the city following further study.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stuhldreher. Are there any other questions, comments from the public, council? Hearing none, I'm going to ask my question, and it was a little related to Council President's inquiry earlier, which is just to say that I guess my question is to the Public Works Department, would it be detrimental if this plan, if we tabled this for this month and adopted next month so that the individuals that volunteered on this committee had just a little extra time to review for clerical errors in the plan?
The grant expires at the end of this month. We would need to apply for an extension to DCED before we could close out this plan.
Okay.
I would like to say that
sounds like yes.
In September, we had a steering committee meeting as well as a webinar. So it was a public comment period. It was announced at that time that the plan would be available online at Engage Lancaster for review. Steering committee was given an opportunity to comment and provide comments. Those comments were incorporated as needed and as the staff and the consultants felt should be added. A lot of that was that the grammar and spelling and typographical, the clerical issues. So there was that opportunity. Again, I apologize, for any misunderstanding or miscommunication that you did not receive a copy of this back at the end of October, because it was presented before the November committee meeting.
There are a couple of things I'd like to be able to say about being able to approve the quote-unquote public recreation open space master plan at this time. As a master plan, it is not a detailed design or set of designs. It is the thrust of movement, its prioritization of the projects, and it's a clarification of what many of the concerns are, what the research has been, and it's an opening for further investigation of every aspect that is related to that plan. So, as an example, with the skate parks, the potential for skate parks, there's nothing that prohibits consideration of skate parks on a small scale in some of the other parks in an earlier phase of the project. What the thrust is that skate parks and such types of active recreation are and should be an integral part of long-term planning for the park system. It's because we have this looming deadline for being able to confirm the utilization of, or the intended utilization of the funds, I would ask that we do be able to continue to move expeditiously forward with an approval of the plan, recognizing that every park will also entertain its own design effort, its own planning effort. The East End Small Area Plan is a larger scale element, which allows us to think about a municipal pool in a different way, or other citywide amenities in a different way, but it recognizes in this master plan that overwhelmingly there's a need for not only active recreation support, and physical amenities and facilities. So I would be pushing for that, recognizing that this does not preclude anything.
Understood. So could we maybe, could I move this to our later, we're going to have 2 meetings of council. I'd prefer to move this to the later one. Would it be possible then, I believe December 17th is going to be our last meeting of this year, and would it be possible to move it to that date and then give some committee folks time just, again, for clerical review at this point. I understand not wanting to fundamentally change. I guess I'm asking if we're allowed to do that.
I would just say that for the clerical review, that is really a staff responsibility, not a committee responsibility, and that we are reviewing the completion of the plan to then send to DCNR to fulfill our grant commitment. I would also just reiterate that the individual park plans will allow for continued community engagement. I think back to the most recent parks plan, which was done in 2010-ish.
Right.
2009.
2009, thank you, Carl. That plan and the prioritization of the parks and what eventually came to fruition for Brandon, Rodney, Crystal parks as just the three larger parks that were included in that, developed over time and incorporated other elements, other priorities of the city, including public art as well as green infrastructure. And so there's and this is not just for you, Councilor Hirsch, but just for the public, there are a lot, this is a very broad brush in terms of the prioritization and a look at the overall parks system in the city versus the deep dive that is necessary for us that you're going to hear a little bit about momentarily as it relates to the Joe Jackson Tot lot and the planning efforts that are related to that. So I think in terms of your concern related to typographical errors and images and things like that, that is really something that Carl and Cindy and the DPW team are responsible for making sure are all cleaned up.
Thank you. I will make a motion to move this to our meeting of council on December 9th. All those on the Public Works Committee in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The second item on the agenda for the Public Works Committee is Administration Bill number 15, appropriating American Rescue Plan Act funds for renovations to the Joe Jackson Tot lot, and I believe that's what we're going to hear about now.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you very much, Carl, for your presentation related to the master plan. So the Joe Jackson is one of the three parks that we've all identified as key priorities that need to be addressed sooner rather than later. Joe Jackson, in fact, is in a situation where because it gets a lot of use and a lot of very good use by the community, but has tremendous needs that have been realized, it needs to be resuscitated earlier rather than later. Initial costs had been anticipated to be less than they currently are. The current cost for new equipment, new water feature, et cetera, is $1.8 million. And we had originally anticipated that would be in part done as part of a package contemplated with the use of ARPA and other funds. Because of the sequencing and the need for us moving forward early in 2025 with a new bond issue, what we have proposed is that $1 million of the ARPA be designated for Joe Jackson to accelerate its design and move its construction forward so that it would be the first one moving ahead. There's already in addition to that $1 million, towards that $1.8 million, we have a grant for $250,000 from DCNR, and we've identified approximately $230,000 from the 2022 bond issue to move this particular project forward, as well as design efforts for the South End Park, because all three parks are necessary. As you've seen a number of weeks ago, the designs for South End, Yule Gans, and Joe Jackson Park are very, very dynamic. They include a lot more things than we ever imagined would be able to be included in those parks. We had a very imaginative consultant and an incredible amount of engagement by the public to do those kinds of parks. So we are fully wanting to move South End Park forward in its design phase early as well. There are alternative ways of thinking about the funding, but that is what our plan is.
Thank you, Director Campbell. It's a helpful overview. I will open questions or comments up to the Public Works Committee or full council. Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councilor Hirsch, and thank you, Director Campbell. If allocated, what would be the timeline for the project to be complete?
That's a very good question. Cindy, do you know offhand? I keep on messing up the timeframes with the three parks being in such close proximity to each other, time-wise.
Our goal is definitely to start construction this year. Originally we had hoped that we would be in construction earlier in this year, but I think at this point, I would say more towards the end of the summer. We're hoping to have construction starting.
So this year is 2025?
I'm sorry. Yes, 2025. I'm thinking we're in the new year already.
We're already living in the future.
I'm planning ahead.
Thank you, and that concludes my questions.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Any other questions or comments from council as a whole? Council President.
Thank you, Councilor Hirsch. Could you just remind council and members of the public that the public engagement that went into the Joe Jackson plan, because I think it was pretty robust, so this isn't something that's new. It's been in the works.
True. This is something that we've had public engagement in these parks for about the better part of a year. In fact, they were initiated a little bit before then, but we had grouped South End, Joe Jackson, and Yule Gans parks together because they were addressing needs that were identified early in the Parks and Recreation Open Space Master Planning process of dire needs that are unmet in this particular part of the city. What we did was a series of surveys as well as reach outs to community groups. In the spring, there were open forums, and we had site visits with community members. The consultants brought out not only a lot of cutouts and a lot of participation at every age group, children, tweens, young adults with young children, as well as other adults, identifying a lot of the needs in each of these parks, but also a new type of graphic representation of the possibilities that I think gave us some possibilities that never otherwise would have been thought about. How can certain types of active recreation coexist with certain kinds of passive recreation? How can they be understood on the pathways from one recreation facility or park facility to another? And all three of these parks came out to be not only very dynamic in terms of their designs, but also very filled with active opportunities, not only for active recreation, but for design elements, for softscape, hardscape, opportunities for performance as well as activities. This really became a new way for us to move forward, a nuanced new way for us to move forward with the engagement process for the parks. And I think it's going to portend some great work for all the other parks as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Councilor Cleese.
Thank you, Councilor Hirsch. What is the plan for maintaining Joe Jackson third lot after the renovations are completed?
So one of the nice things about what we've been doing is almost everything that's being considered is relatively low maintenance, even though it seems like it's very colorful and multiple materials and things like that. We are not only anticipating an operations budget, which may be just a tad bit more robust because we need to take care of a variety of age groups utilizing these different parks, but we're also looking towards being able to engage what we call the adopted program in a variety of senses. Carl had mentioned a little bit about how we want to be able to engage with our communities, but we will not be relying on those for the ultimate maintenance. We have actually contemplated possibly a two-tier way of looking at it. If we have, similar to what we were working out with Culleton Park and other parks as possibilities, if we have a very active community group that's engaged with that facility, then the park can be designed for more amenities that would be maintained by those community groups. If not, the bottom phase or the low end of the park is still a very dynamic looking park with a variety of materials, low maintenance materials and colors and et cetera.
And you said earlier that the total cost of the project is 1.8 million?
Yes, that's correct.
So how were the costs of the renovations were determined?
So there are a lot of guidelines in terms of the cost per square foot for certain levels of activity, of materials, equipment, play equipment, and the types of amenities that are proposed. So when you have a water feature, for instance, there's some internal plumbing, et cetera, that's required that has to be appropriate for freeze-thaw cycle, et cetera, but also being able to design it so that it's as low maintenance as possible, hardscapes that are easy to maintain. There's a variety of ways. I had mentioned at an earlier council meeting, there's a guide which is considered RS means, the cost for costing. Our consultants used a variety of means to not means as in RS means, but a variety of ways of looking at not only the equipment, but the cost per square foot for a certain level of activity. Is there more that you'd like to be able to say about costing?
Yeah, I would just say that, through that public engagement process, there were concepts that were developed that identified the features and, the work that would need to go into that. So at a conceptual level, we have all those pieces, and then the consultant we used a professional cost estimator who's very familiar with the costs related to construction of this type. So that's where our cost estimates came from.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you, Councilor Hirsch.
Thank you, Council, please. Any other questions from council or the committee? Hearing none, I'd make a motion to move bill number 15/2024 to our full meeting of council on December 10th for a first reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And that concludes the Public Works Committee.
Thank you very much, Councilor Hirsch. We will now move to the Economic Development Committee. Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. The Economic Development Committee does have two items on the agenda, starting with Administrative Bill number 16, 2024, appropriating American Rescue Plan Act funds for revenue replacement in 2024. Council, as you are aware, this is retroactively for the year of 2024, which was approved in the budget process for 2024 for $6 million from the ARPA allocations received from the U.S. Treasury. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? From council as a whole? Council President?
Councilor Ahmed, thank you. Just as a reminder, because we've been going through this for the last couple of years, revenue replacement is an approved use for ARPA funding, and we have historically and continue to take less than what we could to fill any sort of funding gap from these dollars.
Thank you, Council President. Any questions from the public? Hearing none, I will move Administrative Bill number 16, 2024 to our next meeting with council on December 10th. Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Moving on to Administrative Bill number 17, 2024, appropriating American Rescue Plan Acts for revenue replacement in 2025. Again, this is approving revenue replacements of $2.4 million for the ARPA allocations for 2025. And I believe that we're doing this proactively for 2025 due to the federal regulations on revenue replacement. Michelle will give us a little bit more insight.
Yes, that's correct. We have to obligate those funds now before the end of the year, but they can be used as revenue replacement for next year, 2025, and it is included in the 2025 budget.
Thank you. And my only question is, this $2.4 million is the final remaining ARPA allocations that the city has, other than the $1 million for the Joe Jackson tot lot?
Yes, and then anything that would not, anything that's been already allocated and allocated to other programs, if that revenue, or if those grant funds fell through and weren't completed, then it would go to the critical housing.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? From council as a whole? From the public? Mr. Dastra?
Yeah, Tony Dastra, 700 block New Holland Avenue. I don't fully get behind using the ARPA funds for just general revenue replacement. I feel like we went through the home rule process to avoid needing to use these funds, and these are a great opportunity to enact system change. I understand the tax conversations are complicated. I gave you guys all a document because I have some asks for how we could balance the budget and create more equity in our taxing system under the restrictive Pennsylvania law. We can go into that at the next meeting because I plan on coming back, but I would much rather see these funds allocated to some of these things I've been talking about earlier, like investing in our parks and public property to enact system change to try and help people out of their struggles. I understand there are rules and restrictions on these things, but we're investing in Joe Jackson tot lot. I apologize for mixing up the agenda items earlier. A lot of American Rescue Plan items up here, but I digress to say I really think that we need to be investing in our public parks, our public property, creating places and systems so that we can save people from the elements and potentially get them help. Again, I understand our resources are not unlimited, but like these are initiatives I think the people of Lancaster genuinely support because we don't like seeing people suffer and we also don't like people being swept away. So I would encourage you to reconsider that specific item. Obviously, retroactively, we need the revenue replacement. Not going to argue with that at all. But going forward with the opportunity we have with Home Rule now, this is our opportunity. This is our last chance. These are the only funds that are kind of like general. We can use them for whatever we would like. So I understand you might move this forward for further discussion at other council meetings, but I really hope that you consider investing these in different ways. I think the people of Lancaster City are expecting big change. We need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. And I will just add that revenue replacements like this $2.4 million allow the city to continue to have staff levels and their commitments to other projects such as parks. So although it may seem that this could be used other ways, this does allow the city to have a more robust strategy when it comes to the budget. Are there any other, Mayor Srirachi?
If I could just add that I believe that for Administration Bill number 16, 2024, Council, this is a retroactive allocation for this calendar year budget, which was approved with the understanding that we would use ARPA funds for revenue replacement. So I just wanted to clarify that for number 16. And then for number 17, we do need to have these funds committed by the end of this calendar year. And all of the budget presentations that council has been viewing since October have included revenue replacement as we continue to bridge out of utilizing ARPA to help fill the gap. Mr. Dastra is right that we have now different revenue tools, obviously through Home Rule Charter, which is going to allow us to continue to move out of that and hopefully avoid future tax increases. And so all of the ARPA funds have been discussed at length that beginning back in October with our budget presentations that have included ARPA funds for 24, for 25, and then no additional ARPA funds, obviously, moving forward.
Thank you, Mayor Sirachi. Any other comments from full council? I make a motion to move Bill 1724 to our next meeting of full council on December the 10th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Council President. That concludes the Economic Development Committee.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. All right, we will now move into the Committee of the Whole this evening. We have two items on the agenda before us. The first one is Bill number 18, 2024. This is conforming that all ordinances that aren't inconsistent with the Home Rule Charter remain in effect. And Mr. Henberger is here to, I'm sure, explain the intricacies of this. It seems pretty straightforward. Mr. Henberger, welcome.
Actually, there's not a whole lot of intricacies. This one is pretty straightforward. So as you're aware, the citizens of Lancaster adopted a home rule charter, which will become effective January 1st, 2025. While the charter has language in it that says the ordinances remain in effect, this is what attorneys would call belt and suspenders. We want to make sure that there's a legislative enactment given to say that the existing ordinances will stay in effect pending any change by this council. That also assures that various things that are enforced under those ordinances, that the officers and employees of the city have the authority to continue enforcing them in case anybody might take a position or try to make a position that these were adopted under the third-class city code and optional charter and not under the home rule charter and therefore aren't effective. So it's a matter of good practice, safe practice to preserve the status quo while we continue to work for the changes that will come with an administrative code and ordinance review through the home rule process.
Great, thank you.
And you didn't say belt and suspenders. This is a belt and suspenders ordinance before you.
Yes.
Both. Just a question, it seems like a sound thing to do. Has similar legislation been adopted in other cities as they transfer to?
Well, I can only tell you that we were encouraged to do this by our consultants for this process. Whether other cities have done it, I haven't looked. This was discussion that the consultants and I had several months ago. I had talked to them about it. They recommended it. They think it's the wise course of action. There has been litigation in multiple cities over existing ordinances following the adoption of a home rule charter. So again, this is meant to try and protect us and allow council the leave and flexibility it needs to develop code over the next 18 months as required by the charter.
I appreciate all of that. Thank you. Opening up to questions from other members of council and from the public. Hearing none, I will make a motion to move this bill to first reading on our meeting on December 10th.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. We can take this by affirmation. All of those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, thank you. The next item on our committee of the whole agenda is Resolution 94, 2024. This is authorizing a flag raising, the Dominican flag raising at City Hall. Councilors, we've done this these types of ordinances resolutions a number of times. They're required to come before council. Typically, it is 120 days. This one falls just short of that, and I did make an exception to move it forward because we are still getting everybody up to speed and marking their calendars 120 days in advance. In this case, the Dominican flag raising is proposed to happen on February 27th, 2025. With a inclement weather backup date of February 28th, 2025. And council comments on this resolution for a flag raising? From the public. Hearing none, I will make a motion to move this resolution to our meeting on December 10th, 2024.
Second, or motion to move to the next meeting.
That's my motion, you can second.
Second.
Okay. Thank you very much. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you very much, members of council. That concludes the committee of the whole and the last item on our agenda. The final item is the clerk's report. Mr. Harris, you've provided that in writing to all members of council. Is that correct?
I have, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Then having reached the end of our agenda, I will hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Hey, Chris, thanks for all your help tonight. I wanted to say the next week for the 10th.
Yes.
Will you do those things in Hexagon, or you just do that history day? Just wanted to kind of get a sense for how I should prepare.
I'd given this